What is up, Packers fans? Happy Saturday. Welcome into this all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Thank you so much for making Pack-A-Day part of your daily routine. You guys are the absolute best. Of course, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, give those 5-star reviews. Any of those interactions with the podcast help a ton. And of course, make sure to tell a friend as well. Also, check out those Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube memberships. Shout out to Tulio Fonseca, Driving Crooner. Love that name, by the way. A little I think you should leave action there. And then Maxwell S. Thank you to the three of you for becoming all new Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube members. We are up to 485 members. We are inching ever so close to 500 members. So that is unbelievably amazing. Thank you to all of you who have already signed up. Also want to talk a little bit about Autograph. Autograph is amazing. Go in on your phone, download the app. It is your one-stop shop for all things Green Bay Packers. Your favorite articles, your favorite writers, your favorite podcasts, Pack-A-Day out there, plus exclusive content. I've done 2 episodes already this past week, breaking down how these rookies are dominating the defense and taking it over already. Edgerrin Cooper, Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, and did an episode breaking down some of the key matchups in Packers Texans. So download the app today and make sure to check that out. Also, if you have not heard yet, Pack-A-Day radio show, brand new. We're 1 week in already. I cannot believe that I've already done a full week of it. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., 12:50 a.m. and 105.7 FM, The Fan in Milwaukee. Make sure to check that out as well. You can find it on thefanmilwaukee.com as well as on the Odyssey app. So make sure to check that out. From a Packers standpoint, which I know we want to get into right away, Packers have their updated injury report as well as the Texans. Out for Green Bay, Devontae Wyatt, so this will be his 3rd consecutive week, missing action. Hopefully he can make it back sooner rather than later. I've seen some people say like, hey, shouldn't they have just put him on IR? These are not exact sciences. Like you don't always have the situation where when you have that initial decision, you don't always know like, yep, it's going to be exactly 4 weeks or exactly 6 weeks or exactly 2 weeks. Sometimes you think a guy's going to be out 5-6 weeks and it ends up being 2 or 3. Sometimes you think he's going to be out 2 or 3 and it ends up being 5 or 6. And it can go even further extreme than that. And the last thing you want to do is put Devontae Wyatt on IR and have him miss 4 weeks. And all of a sudden you get 2 weeks in and you're like, yeah, if we didn't put him on IR, he could have played this week. Like that's not what you want, right? So if it ends up that you have to be a man short for a few weeks because you accidentally, or not even accidentally, just didn't put him IR because you wanted to be safe, I totally get that. And there is not like Green Bay needed that extra roster spot at any time these past few weeks. Like they're in a good spot from an injury standpoint, knock on wood, but they never need it. Like they're going to have to deactivate enough people every single week anyway. And it's not like they're scrounging for players to get on, like they're totally fine. So no harm, no foul there. And hopefully you can get back sooner rather than later. Questionable for Green Bay, Dontavian Wicks and Colby Wooden. Always talk to you guys about, all right, were they questionable and didn't practice or questionable and did practice? The great news is Wicks and Wooden practiced the last 2 days. Wicks practiced all week long. So hopefully that's a great sign for those two. If Wicks cannot go, they have enough depth at wide receiver, so it's not going to be a major issue. If Wooden cannot go, with Devontae Wyatt being out, that gets into a little bit more of an interesting question where they have to probably make a roster move. I would assume in that situation, Jonathan Ford does get activated off of IR, but we'll talk about that more in just a moment. From a Texans standpoint, we talked all week, the 2 linebackers were the ones to keep an eye on, Henry Toto and Azeez El-Shaair. Both of them are out for this game. We already knew Kamari Lassiter and Jimmy Ward were going to be out, and then Robert Woods, the wide receiver, also out for this game. Foley Fatukasi and Steven Sims, both questionable. Fatukasi, one of the key interior defenders for this team, usually is one of their starters. And then Steven Sims, wide receiver / kick returner. He had an injury that flared up at the end of the week and did not practice on Friday, or at least was limited. I'd have to go back and look at that. But either way, he is listed as questionable. Laramie Tunsil, the great offensive tackle for the Texans, is good to go. So they did get some good news there. As I mentioned, one of the interesting aspects of today on Saturday is going to be the practice squad call-ups / transactions for Green Bay. And I say transactions because they do have a decision to make ultimately on Jonathan Ford. This is the 3rd and final week that they had that window open. So they have to make a decision now. He either needs to be put on the active roster or he needs to go back on IR. And if he goes back on IR, he's not hurt anymore. He's a full participant. You cannot there's rules against just keeping somebody on IR if they're healthy. It's not allowed by the NFLPA and the rule book and everything else. So they would have to let him go and they would lose him. So this is sort of a now or never for Jonathan Ford. Remember, they did put a designated to return. That's one of the ones that they got to use this season. They utilized it on Jonathan Ford. Clearly, they had some intention of putting him on the 53 at some point. Well, now would potentially be the time. The question then becomes, all right, well, what do you do if you do put him on the 53? Is it one of those defensive ends, Aaron Mosby, or is it Brenton Cox that would get released to put Jonathan Ford on the team? Would it be one of your 10th offensive linemen? That would either be Andre Dillard or Travis Glover. I don't see them releasing Dillard. It's not impossible, but I don't think it's likely, especially because his contract is guaranteed at this point. Travis Glover, he's a draft pick. Maybe you could release him and feel good about getting him back on the practice squad. You probably would. I don't think you would lose him, but maybe Green Bay likes him enough not to want to subject him to waivers. Those would probably be the leaders in the clubhouse for a potential spot if they did want to open one up for Jonathan Ford, or again, they just don't activate him and that ends basically his run in Green Bay. We'll see what they ultimately decide, but that's one to keep an eye on. And then any other call-ups. Andrew Beck had a role within this team, especially last week against Arizona. Did they feel good enough about John Fitzpatrick to be that number 3 tight end, or did they bring Beck back up? Those are going to probably be the two main ones to kind of keep an eye on, both Jonathan Ford from IR and Andrew Beck from the practice squad if they want to make either of those transactions on Saturday. They could make none. Again, do nothing with Jonathan Ford. Don't call anyone up and just go with already, everyone that's on the roster already. Part of that would be predicated on Colby Wooden, right? If Colby Wooden is not good to go, then they're going to have to make some move. If Wooden is good and they feel comfortable with it, don't feel like there's any real risk of re-injury there, then they can probably get by with the 4 defensive tackles, which is pretty much what they've done all season long. All right, that brings us to our main topic for today. And I did not get enough film work done yet that I felt comfortable going into a full film room just on the Houston Texans for today. Never going to fluff it for you guys. So I'm going to do a little bit more on Saturday today, and then I will break that down a little bit more on our pregame show for Sunday. So I'll utilize that film review for Sunday a little bit more. But today, what I wanted to do is look at sort of a stock report. Who's trending up? Who's trending down? One of the things I always get to the end of the year and I do a final grades episode of like, all right, who did awesome, who did poorly, etc. Like I'd go through a whole thing. It's like kind of like a year in review from a grade standpoint. Every single time I do it, I'm like, why do I not do more with this through the course of the year? At least maybe like some checkpoints here and there, because I spend all of this time, and it is an insane amount of time, grading every player on every play. And I know you can check out the full grades over on Packer Report, and it's kind of, you get the totals there. But I never get to go into a little bit more detail during the season. I do the weekly grades episodes, which are great. I love doing those. It's always fun talking about it. But I don't necessarily, kind of do the checkpoints of here's who are the top 10 players so far this year from a grade standpoint. Here's the bottom 10. Here's who's trending up, trending down, what positions are doing well, and so on and so forth. So today, I figure we would take a second and go through the grades through what I consider the first third of this season, right? It's an 18-week season. I know there's a bye in there, but it's an 18-week season. We are 6 weeks in, so we are a third of the way through the season. Let's go through my top 10 Packers, my bottom 10 Packers, the players with the highest graded games so far this year, the top player at each position, worst player at each position, the grades by position, rookie grades so far, players who need to step up, and some pleasant surprises so far. So we're going to go through all of those. Let's start with a really fun one, our top 10 Packers so far in 2024 through 6 weeks. Still small sample size, right? But we'll go in reverse order. There is no number 10 because there is a tie at number 9. So number 9 and 10 are combined into number 9. And appropriately, it is 2 rookies on the defensive side of the ball, Evan Williams and Edgerrin Cooper, tied at plus 1.85. Really impressive when you consider a couple things. Number 1 is that they're rookies, and that they made the list at all is impressive. Number 2 is that Edgerrin Cooper just started getting any sort of significant playing time, right? And Evan Williams just started getting any significant playing time. So the fact that in a pretty small set of plays that they were given through these 6 weeks, that both of them as rookies were able to crack this top 10 and both come in at number 9, tied at plus 1.85, is ultra impressive. Now, we obviously saw Evan Williams come off a monster game a week ago, forced fumble, big play in the backfield on Kyler Murray. He's had the interception on the Hail Mary. Like, he continues to make plays. He's done it ever since the day that he got to Green Bay, from rookie mini camps up until now. And Edgerrin Cooper, the question is just, he had that injury setback. And then you also you're still hearing some of the stuff about misalignments and some of the attention to detail. But when he is on the field, he is fun to watch. He's a playmaker. He's a game wrecker. Get him out there. Good things are going to happen. We've seen that so far. So really awesome to see these two defensive rookies come in tied for number 9. Number 8, another really fun story here. Sean Rhyan, plus 2.00. Can't say I saw this one coming. I thought last year when Sean Rhyan got in the game, there were flashes. I liked some of the stuff that I saw. I didn't hate the rotation with John Runyan Jr., but over the last 5-6 games of the year last year, it just really felt like John Runyan Jr. was kind of outplaying Sean Rhyan. And John Runyan Jr. wasn't playing that great, if I'm being totally honest. So I liked some of the stuff I was seeing with Ryan, but even then I'm like, I'm kind of just good with running at this point. And then you got into the training camp this year. You were already hearing things about, sort of his conditioning again. It's like, this is year 3. Are we still doing this? And then it looked like he was going to lose his job to Jordan Morgan at right guard. First couple games were kind of And then all of a sudden, week 3, week 4, 2 of the best games. And Adam Stenavich echoed that during his press conferences during the week. Week 5 was a bit of a step back. I think it was due to an injury that he sustained early in that game, where you could just tell he had some discomfort there. And then this past week was one of his best games as well. So 3 of the last 4 games have been 3 of the best games of probably the 3 best games of Sean Ryan's career. I really like what he's doing right now. I still think it's going to be a rotation there with Jordan Morgan, but if it keeps going this way and Sean Ryan just keeps playing great football, I'm not sure that rotation needs to exist that much longer. But either way, kudos to Sean Ryan at plus 2.00. Number 7, Jordan Love, plus 2.1. Had a little bit of a negative grade in that first game, then missed weeks 2 and 3. Week 4, you had the rough start against Minnesota, but then he put a really impressive second half of that game together. But it ended with that interception to Dontavian Wicks, where he threw it up at the end. Then had a little bit of a disjointed game against the Rams with the pick 6. And then finally, just a monster performance this past week with 4 touchdowns, which really saw Jordan kind of get back in his groove and be like, yep, that's the Jordan we know and love. That's what kind of got him back on this list. But he's at number 7. Number 6, Tucker Kraft. A little bit of an up and down game this past week, especially from a blocking standpoint. Some tough blocks on there that are a little bit uncharacteristic of Kraft, where we just didn't see him perform at that level that he usually does. But on the season, big time playmaker, good hands, run after the catch. He's blocking well outside of, again, a few blocks this past week. Got to love what you're seeing from second-year tight end Tucker Kraft thus far this season. He's at number 6. Number 5, Malik Willis, plus 2.65. I get it. He only played 2 games, but guess what? When you're at the quarterback position and you put 2 games together where you have a lot of positive plays on the positive side of the ledger and almost no negative plays, including no turnovers or turnover-worthy plays, and you are super efficient, you're going to grade well. And Malik Willis graded well for those 2 games. He ends up with a plus 2.65 and still is at number 5 on this list, despite not playing since week 3 and only playing 2 games on the season. Number 4, Elton Jenkins. Really love what I'm seeing out of Elton. Had a slight negative this past week due to 2 penalties, not snapping the ball and causing a false start from a couple other of the offensive linemen. And then at left guard, when he was still there, had the illegal hands to the face penalty. If it had not been for those 2 plays, would have graded in the positive. But even before that, again, just super impressed with what Elton's put on tape so far this year. He's playing close to, if not the best football of his career, in my opinion. And he just continues to look better and better. I'm excited to see if he can, kind of continue this through the remainder of the year and just put together his ultimate season so far. But he is definitely trending in that direction. Number 3, Josh Jacobs, plus 3.15. This would even be higher had it not been for a couple times that he's put the ball on the ground, right? One in the red zone against the Colts, which could have definitely cost Green Bay dearly. And then once in week 1 against Philly, where Green Bay was lucky enough to recover that one. Even still, the tough yardage that he is getting, he's taking care, or I should say he's taking care of finding those holes when needed, but also just those little creases, breaking a tackle here or there, running over somebody. He's just been super efficient so far. And I know if you look at the yards per carry number and those, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but what he's getting with some of the blocking that's there, I've been impressed by. And I think he's been a great addition to this offense. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. Certainly is a good screen player. We've seen that on a couple different occasions, and he's going to continue to pay dividends for this offense as a really good pickup by Brian Gutekunst and is deserving of number 3 on this list. Xavier McKinney, number 2, plus 4.65. I don't even need to go into this. 6 interceptions, 5 interceptions, fumble recovery, 6 turnovers in 6 games. Just an absolute stud. Even without the turnovers, he's played great. and certainly a massive signing for Brian Gutekunst and deserving again of number 2 on this list. And then number 1, Jayden Reed plus 5.95, monster first game, monster fourth game, 4 other games that all graded in the positive. He's been everywhere, doing everything in the backfield, in the slot, on the outside, deep, intermediate, short, left, right, all of it. Gadget guy, non-gadget guy, just a stud, just a star, a stud, everything you want him to be. And he has been the number 1 player for Green Bay so far in my book, again, with a plus 5.95. So tied for number 9, Edgerrin Cooper and Evan Williams. 8 is Sean Ryan. 7's Jordan Love. 6 Tucker Kraft. 5 Malik Willis. 4 Elton Jenkins. 3 Josh Jacobs. 2 Xavier McKinney. And 1 Jayden Reed. My bottom 10 Packers will go from worst to not quite as bad. My lowest graded Packer, Eric Stokes, negative 2.9. Just when we talked about Malik Willis, right, where you've got a lot of efficient, positive plays on the ledger and not many negatives, Stokes is basically just the opposite. Too many negative plays on his ledger, not enough positives. Not enough PBUs, not enough tackles in the run game, no big interception type plays. You have to, and especially at corner, where you're going to give up some stuff, right? You're going to give up some plays. That's okay. You live to fight another day. But on the times where you're not giving up some stuff, you've got to make some stuff happen on your own to get that back going in your direction. You need a pick. You need a whatever, anything, any sort of big play that can kind of get you back in the positive. And there's been far too many times where he has been beat. I talked about this past week, even in limited snaps against Arizona, he gets, torched on a route and it should have been a touchdown. Just Kyler Murray missed it. It's been a tough start. Listen, I get maybe he was rusty coming into the year, but listen, he had a solid offseason, got to play almost all the snaps as the starting outside corner all throughout camp. He's healthy. Matt LaFleur said it's the best physically and mentally that Stokes has ever been. And you still put him on the field and it just hasn't been good enough. To the point, like, you might say, Andy, you're harsh on Stokes or whatever. I'm cheering on the guy. I want him to do well. There's a reason he played, 8 snaps this last week, 8, 9 snaps, whatever it was. There's a reason why he hasn't been on the field as much. It's because of this. When he's out there, it just has not been good enough. Number 2, not going to come as a surprise to anyone either. Quay Walker, negative 2.65. Just has to find more ways to impact the game in a positive way. This is the Josh Myers conversation from years past. And we'll talk about him in a positive way in just a moment. But with Quay and with Josh through the years, right? There was so many negative plays where you'd see flashes here and there. You'd be like, oh, this looks really good. But then there'd be so many negative and you're just like, can you just play at a neutral level? Can you just play at a neutral level? And I'll be so happy. You'll be a solid player, solid starter. And just like Josh on the offensive side, where he's doing a lot of the line calls and the checks, and he's important from that side of things, can you just play neutral football? I'm not asking you to go out and be a huge positive. I just need you to not be a big negative, right? That's where I'm at with Quay. You're making the calls. You're the green dot. You're out there every single play. I get it's a tough role. I understand it. They're asking you to do a lot in this defense. A middle linebacker is a tough position, but I don't need you to be a massive positive. I would love it since you were a first round pick, but I'm not asking that. If you can just get to neutral with your intangibles, with your speed, with your, again, propensity and ability to be able to call the plays and get everyone aligned, that's fine. But it can't be a negative 2.65. Hasn't been as good as a blitzer as I would like to see him be. He has not been great in pass coverage. He hasn't been a good enough take-on defender, not good enough in the run game. He's an okay tackler. Just need more. Just absolutely need more. Now, 3 is a fun discussion. I have Keyshawn Nixon, number 3 on my list here at negative 1.35. And I will tell you, and I know they're my grades. I get to grade them. I'm the one that's doing it. There's nobody else. I don't have anybody over here that's helping with it. It's just me. I don't have a team of individuals. So they're my grades. And I would still say I have no problem with what Keyshawn Nixon has done so far. Put in some tough situations, like the touchdown to Justin Jefferson. Yes, he could get his head turned, but like Justin just catches it off of his back. Like there's been some of those things, and like I've said, and one of my biggest things that I've learned is, man, the slot is tough. And I know he's playing a little bit more on the outside now, but the slot is a tough position, and you're going to get beat. It is a really tough role when you have all these dynamic playmakers that go in the slot. You have to be able to blitz, take on blocks, run, stop, everything. So yeah, he ends up with a little bit more on the negative side of the ledger, negative 1.35, not a brutal grade. He's been mostly positive over the course of the last few weeks, in large part probably due to him not having to play the slot quite as much. I like what Keyshawn Nixon brings to this team. He might not ever be somebody that grades out in the huge positives or things like that, but I like what they're getting from Keyshawn right now. Have no issue with him being on the field as a starter. And despite him being the third lowest graded player on the team for me right now, I think that's going to continue to trend up. And I'm excited about overall what he's bringing to this team. So that's where I'm at with Keyshawn Nixon. Number 4, Kenny Clark, negative 1.25. This was mostly due to the first few games. He is a slight positive over the past few games. So that's a step in the right direction, right? So negative first 3 games, a pretty decent negative, a slight positive the last 3 games. Hopefully these next 3 games, we see him take that another step to a solid player, like a +1 somewhere in there, and then continue on after there and start becoming the dominant Kenny Clark that we know and love. Hasn't been good enough so far. Too many times he's getting moved off of his spot, specifically in the run game, and not enough big impact plays. I think that'll come. We saw some flashes from him last week, and I'm hopeful that he's closer to breaking out, having that big game, and I think he can do it against Kenyon Green and the Houston Texans on the interior of that offensive line this upcoming week. Preston Smith, number 5, negative 1.05. I like him as a run defender, just not a ton of juice right now as a pass rusher. Just need to see a little bit more impact there. We've talked about the defensive ends having to get more pressure. Hasn't been great, so he ends up with a negative 1.05. I do still think he's doing his part as a run defender, though. Rasheed Walker, number 6, negative 0.5, would be in the positive had it not been for all the penalties, right? Too many false starts, too many holding penalties. He cleans that up, and he can be a heck of a lot better, and he has been better, but those penalties have really hurt him. Number 7, TJ Slayton, negative 0.5 as well. I guess tied for number 6 here with Rasheed Walker. He's played better as of late, 2 back-to-back solid games, but early in the year was not getting off of blocks, was playing too high, was getting moved off of his spot. He's not playing a ton of snaps. He's probably in that 15 to 18 snap range, so he should be fresh. And when he comes in, he should be a little bit more dominant. I need to see a little bit more from TJ Slayton. Corey Ballantyne, negative 0.45, has barely played, had basically 1 bad play. Outside of that, he's been mostly fine. Jordan Morgan, negative 0.35, rookie interior offensive lineman that's moving to the inside, that's getting sparse snaps in large part due to some of the injury issues that he's had. We'll see. I think he continues to improve as the season goes along. No real concern here. And then Malik Heath at number 10, negative 0.2, hasn't quite had the impact as a blocker that he has in the past. Hasn't made up enough, catches and plays. Hasn't played a ton. This is a neutral grade basically for him, so nothing really to go over too much. So lowest graded player, Eric Stokes, followed by Quay Walker, Keyshawn Nixon, Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, Rasheed Walker, TJ Slayton, Corey Ballantyne, Jordan Morgan, and Malik Heath. All right, my highest graded games so far this year. Number 1, Jordan Love this past week, plus 3.00. Week 6 against the Cardinals, of course, 22 of 32, 258 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Number 2 on my list, Jaden Reed, plus 2.70 grade, week 1 against the Eagles. 4 catches, 138 yards and a touchdown. 1 rush, 33 yards and a touchdown. So massive week for Jaden Reed in week 1. Number 3, Malik Willis against the Titans, 13 and 19, 202 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Number 4, Jaden Reed in week 4, plus 1.35 against the Vikings, 7 catches, 139 yards, and a touchdown, had 1 rush for 2 yards, not that played too much of a role in it. Malik Willis, number 5, plus 1.30 grade, week 2 against the Colts, 12 of 14, 122 yards and a touchdown with 6 carries for 41 yards. Number 6, Kingsley Enagbare, plus 1.30 in week 3 against the Titans, had 4 tackles, 1.5 sacks, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and that huge forced fumble against Will Levis in that game. Number 7, Eric Wilson, plus 1.25 grade week 2 against the Colts. Remember, he only played like 8 snaps in that game, which is super impressive. Had a tackle, had a pass breakup, an interception, a forced fumble, and had that big play on the read option on, what was it, a 3rd or 4th down, where he made the play on Anthony Richardson and company. So like an 8-snap game where he graded massively in the positive because he made a huge impact when he was in there. Number 8, Jair Alexander, plus 1.20 grade in week 3 against the Titans. Of course, the pick 6 was the huge play in that game. 5 tackles and 1 PBU as well. Sean Ryan, plus 1.20 week 4 against the Vikings. Had a really nice week. Pass pro was great. Run blocking was really good. So that was, again, my favorite Sean Ryan game of his career so far. And then number 10 was Elton Jenkins, plus 1.15 grade week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, my top graded player at each position. Quarterback, Malik Willis with a plus 2.65 grade. Josh Jacobs at running back, 3.15 grade. Jaden Reed at wide receiver, plus 5.95. Tucker Kraft at tight end, plus 2.25. My highest graded offensive lineman, Elton Jenkins at 2.95. Devontae Wyatt, still my highest graded interior defender with a plus 1.00. Kingsley Enagbare, my highest graded edge rusher at plus 0.6. Edgerrin Cooper at linebacker with a 1.85 grade. Jair Alexander at corner with a plus 0.75. And Xavier McKinney at safety with a plus 4.65. My lowest graded player at each position, technically Jordan Love with a plus 2.10. That's not going to last for long. Marshawn Lloyd at running back, still a plus 0.2 grade, and he barely got any opportunity. Wide receiver Malik Heath, negative 0.2. Tight end Andrew Beck with a plus 0.2. Again, he barely played, and when he did, he still had a slight positive there. Rasheed Walker at offensive line, negative 0.5. Kenny Clark on the defensive line, negative 1.25. Preston Smith at defensive end, negative 1.05. Quay Walker at linebacker, negative 2.65. Eric Stokes at corner, negative 2.9. And Javon Bullard at safety, but he is still in the positive with a plus 0.8, just going against Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney. Those two are going to come out on top so far. My grades by position. So we've got my number one highest graded position on the team so far is wide receiver with a plus 8.95 in large part due to Jaden Reed. Safety is number two, plus 7.30, McKinney, Bullard, and Evan Williams, of course. Offensive line, plus 6.35. Running back, plus 5.25. Quarterback, plus 4.75. Tight end, plus 3.05. Linebacker, plus 0.55. Defensive end, plus 0.1. Defensive tackle, negative 0.3. And corner, negative 3.8. So highest wide receiver, followed by safety, offensive line, running back, quarterback, tight end, linebacker, defensive end, defensive tackle, and then corner. How about rookie grades so far? Jordan Morgan, negative 0.35. Edgerrin Cooper, plus 1.85. Javon Bullard, plus 0.8. Marshawn Lloyd, plus 0.2. Tyron Hopper has not played. Evan Williams, plus 1.85. And then Monk, Oladapo, Glover, King have not played, and Michael Pratt, of course, is a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. But total for the draft class so far, there's really only four guys that are playing: Morgan, Cooper, Bullard, and Williams, with just a small cup of coffee from Marshawn Lloyd, plus 4.35, a massive grade for a rookie class so far. So you love to see that. You'd like to see maybe a couple more of those guys play if given an opportunity to maybe play well, but right now they haven't been needed, and that's totally fine and understandable at this point. All right, I'm going to do two more categories. The first one is players who need to step up. These are not in any particular order, other than, I guess, just kind of going down the list. Dontavian Wicks, negative 0.05. He should be well in the positive and has had a lot of opportunities to be well in the positive. He needs to step up moving forward. Rasheed Walker, negative 0.5. Just get rid of the penalties. If he gets rid of the penalties, he's been playing fine. Played great in the second half of last year. I need to see that, Rasheed Walker. Kenny Clark, negative 1.25. We talked about that. Just need to see a bit more of an impact on the interior from him. Same thing with TJ Slayton at a negative 0.5. I don't expect TJ Slayton to be this massively, highly graded player in the positive, but he shouldn't be in the negative. Preston Smith, negative 1.05. Just need a little bit more juice as a pass rusher. Rashawn Gary, plus 0.4. I need him to be like a plus 10 by the end of the year, which means he should be at like a plus 3.6 by now. And he's at a plus 0.4. So it's great that he's not grading in the negative and like this huge, massive issue, but you need to be an impact guy. He hasn't really been that yet. Hopefully this is the week that he can break out this upcoming week. Quay Walker, we talked about negative 2.65, and Eric Stokes, we talked about negative 2.90. So players who need to step up: Wicks, Walker, Clark, Slayton, Smith, Gary, Walker, and Stokes. And my pleasant surprises: Malik Willis, plus 2.65, comes in, gets 2 spot starts, and is unbelievably efficient in both of them. Green Bay picks up 2 wins. Emmanuel Wilson, plus 1.60. Talked about this on Happy Hour on Friday. There's something there with Emmanuel Wilson. I'm telling you, there is something there. I'm not sure I can go as far as to say he can be a legit big-time starter, but there's something there. I love it. I love the way that he's playing. He's a really good running back. Josh Myers, I told you, spoiler before, that I would talk about him. Plus 0.7. Plus 0.7. Josh Myers, let's go. He's been a player I've talked about a ton. And this is it for me. All right. If you want to know how I view this stuff, I have to tell you, all right, when Josh Myers is not playing well, I would suck at doing what I do if I'm like, yeah, he's fine, he's doing good, and he really wasn't, right? I don't think that's why anyone's coming here. I want all of these players to do well. I like Josh coming out of the draft. I really did. I was hoping he was going to come in and succeed and be that next great center in Green Bay. In his rookie year, I really liked what I saw. I thought there was some really positive stuff. Year 2 and 3 sucked. I didn't like it at all. I really was bummed by it, but it didn't look good. This year, so far, Really like what I see out of Josh Myers. This is this massive positive grade? No. Can I live with a plus 0.7 from Josh Myers all day, every day? Absolutely. Excited about it and happy that he's playing well and hopefully goes on to have just an unbelievable career from here, whether it's with Green Bay or somebody else, but very happy for Josh Myers in the way that he's playing so far this season. We talked about Sean Rhyan plus 2.0, Edgerrin Cooper plus 1.85. I put Xavier McKinney on this list. Like, this is kind of expected, but still he's playing at such a high level that it's still even above and beyond. So plus 4.65, and then Evan Williams, 4th round pick, plus 1.85. So my pleasant surprises: Malik Willis, Emmanuel Wilson, Josh Myers, Sean Rhyan, Edgerrin Cooper, Xavier McKinney to some extent, and then Evan Williams. All right, friends, that is going to do it for me today. I will be right back here tomorrow with a Packers Texans pregame show you will not want to miss. Shout out to our Hall of Fame and All-Pro members: Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Shea Bradad, Brendan Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Dan Miller, Alex Wong, Arnoldo Espinoza, Peter Ritaka, SoCal Pack, Dan Guessford, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, and Love and Football. I will see you guys all very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's Packers Texans tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.